Hi, I'm Kim, one of the careers consultants working here at the University of Manchester, and in this short session, I'm going to help you get CV ready. The purpose of a CV is to demonstrate the relevant skills, experience, and knowledge that make you a strong candidate for the job you're applying for. A CV is sometimes needed when applying for postgraduate study too. Tailoring your CV for each application is really important. Focus on the most interesting and relevant experience that the role is looking for, and you'll find that out primarily through the advertised job description, but you also might find helpful information about what the company is looking for on their website or on their social media, such as LinkedIn or Twitter, or even in the sector news. A CV will be part of your entire career, not just required to apply for a graduate role or for further study. So it's really worth an investment of your time now to learn how to make your CV stand out. Often students come to us and wonder why, when they've sent out multiple CVs for lots of different jobs, none of them have been successful. Now, that's usually connected to the fact that they haven't spent enough time thinking about all the experiences they have and the skills that they developed as a result. So spend a lot of time reflecting and researching the role and the organisation that you're applying to. It's well worth it before you even begin to start drafting the CV itself. So what should your CV look like? The two-page reverse chronological CV is the most common style of CV and is suitable for most situations. By this, we mean listing your education and work experience in reverse date order, with the most recent first. Firstly, you must have a section of personal information. Now, in the UK, there's no need to include personal details such as your date of birth, gender, or marital status, and you do not need to include a photograph. Your name, address, telephone, and email details are sufficient. Make sure that your email address is professional. There is a discussion in a GDPR compliant and post-COVID world whether we still need to include a full postal address. You might just want to include your city of residence. Leaving your address off your CV provides a little more space. However, some more traditional employers may still expect to see this. So think about the type of company you're applying for. Including your nationality is optional, but it's good to mention the countries in which you've worked and studied to show that you have a global mindset. You may wish to add your LinkedIn profile's URL on your CV. We'll go into much more detail on the education section later, but make sure it's in reverse chronological order from secondary school through to university, and try to explain any overseas qualifications in a clear, concise, and easily identifiable way. Similarly, we'll speak more about work experience in a later slide, but remember that this can include paid and unpaid work. Make your relevant experience stand out by grouping it together. For example, using a section headed relevant work experience and then a later section of other work experience. You can make this specific to the sector that you're applying for as well. So instead of relevant, you could say legal or scientific work experience, depending on your background. Use headings which best describe the content of each section and adapt the headings to fit your needs. For example, you can see here we've got volunteering, awards and achievements, and positions of responsibility. Now, don't worry if you don't have content for all of these sections. Choose the ones which best fit you and your experience. In your interest section, remember the reader. Make it relevant to what you're applying for, whilst showing the organisation a little bit of your personality and what you enjoy doing in your free time. We'll speak towards the end of the presentation a little bit more about references and how to display these. Personal statements are optional. They're usually found under your contact details. And again, I'll give you some examples later of how you can write these successfully. So here are some common questions. Can you use the same CV for every job? I wish it was the case, but unfortunately not. You do need to tailor your CV for each application. So whilst you might have a base CV that you work from with the standard experience, you will need to tweak and change that every time you apply for a different role. You should use 2 sides of A4 when it comes to length and use all the space. So 1.5 pages isn't enough. If you're a first year student and you don't have much experience yet, then a nice 1-page full CV is better than 1.5. If it's more than 2 pages, the recruiter may just put page 3 in the bin or completely lose interest. So it's a very, very important guideline to adhere to. And that can be true for people that have lots and lots of experience, many years of experience. My CV is still 2 pages, even after many, many years of working. There are some exceptions to this rule. So academic CVs can be as long as they need to include all the relevant papers and conferences. And also a question that we get asked a lot is about a 1-page CV for investment banks, financial organisations, or particularly US-owned companies. They often require a 1-page CV. If you are in any doubt, it's always best to double check with the employer. Now, education should typically come first when applying for graduate level roles, because that offers some context and immediate recognition of your current academic content. Now, we're asking here about, should we break your experience into relevant or recent? And it's important that you always keep it in reverse chronological order, but you can have this in 2 different sections. So a relevant section working in reverse chronological order before moving on to your other work experience in reverse chronology. If you have any gaps on your CV, employers may well raise a question about it. It's much better to acknowledge the gap and offer an explanation within the CV. There's no judgment attached. It is just for continuity and a full understanding of your experiences. It is also to see how you can articulate that different experience. Disclosing anything personal, there's no obligation to go above what you're comfortable with, and for anything sensitive or personal that you're not sure about how to share, do speak to your academic advisor or a careers consultant to seek more advice and support about how best to manage this section of your CV. Now starting to move through the different sections of the CV, you can see how the contact information is displayed here, with the student's name being the title rather than curriculum vitae or CV. Might be slightly larger than the rest of the text and in bold perhaps to distinguish it as a heading. Keep your font nice and simple, such as Arial or Calibri, and we recommend 10.5 or 11-point size. So a little bit of spot the difference here. If we compare side by side the previous example on the left here, and on the right is definitely what not to do. So don't use fancy fonts, italics, and really limit the amount of underlining you have in your CV, if any. You do not need to write curriculum vitae as the title. Remove photos, date of birth, as we discussed. And as we can see here, this is an example of where a student does not have a professional email address. So you might want to consider making a new one if this sounds like something that you have. And that would just consist of some identifiable information such as your name or surname so that they know it's connected to you. I mentioned earlier personal profiles being optional. Here's some examples for you to have a look at. And what do you think about these examples? Bear in mind that some employers like them. It focuses attention at the top of the CV, gives that headline information about you. So you do need to make them very targeted and tailored if you are going to include one. The key is to keep them short and to the point. Some particular skills or characteristics, like you see in the top example there, might be useful to include, but I hope you can see that the second example really gets to the point. It tells me very quickly what experience the candidate already has and in which sectors, and very specifically what they're looking for. So this is a really good example of how to keep it tailored for the different roles you're applying for. A few tips for your education section now. We've spoken about listing your education in reverse chronological order, and make sure you're really consistent with the date formats there and how it's displayed. You can include modules if they're relevant to the role, or maybe some examples of projects that you've undertaken as part of your degree. If you include a predicted or expected grade, then you need to show evidence that's led to you including this. So for example, you can see here they've got the grades from first and second year. Interpret any international qualifications for a UK audience here. And as you can see for UK qualifications, we've got the A-level subject listed here with the grade, but when it comes to GCSEs, you can just keep the quantity, so the overall number of GCSEs, and just make sure that you say that that includes English and maths. We've talked a little about laying out work experience. Now think about the content. So make sure that you use active verbs. We have a list of these on our CV pages on the website to help you. So you can pause the presentation and type that bit link in and you'll get straight to that. It's really important that you use bullet points. Each bullet point should address a key skill that the employer is looking for in their job description with a solid example to provide evidence. You cannot simply say in a bullet point, great at team working. You must provide an example to back this up. So a quick way to remember how to structure this evidence within each bullet point is to use the CAR model. So CAR stands for context, action, and result. So the context, very quickly, you've not got much space in each of these bullet points. So getting to the point, what was the situation and the task that you were required to do? Keep it very brief, keep it specific. Then the actions around what did you do? What was your role? What actions did you take? And it's really important that you use this active language here. So you can see identified, prioritized, worked in a team. And then what was the result? What was the outcome? What did you achieve? Did you improve something? Can you include any feedback that you had? Or can you quantify it? So did you meet a particular target, for example? So to bring this to life a little bit, here's an example of what not to do. Unfortunately, I do see this quite a lot in student CVs. So we really need to build on these examples of things that you've done to really showcase the skills that you have developed and use that active language that we talked about. So here is a much better example. You might want to pause the video for a moment so you can read through this in your own time. You'll see that each sentence is started with that active language. So helped, suggested, and we have some quantifiable information here, such as the number of customers served. This student is showing their proactive contribution and highlighting the specific skills they've gained. This type of part-time experience really helps you to build incredibly useful and relevant transferable skills. So please don't underestimate it when you're talking to employers. Think carefully about all the brilliant skills you've gained and then think carefully about how to evidence them using active language and the CAR model. Here are just a few more examples to show you how you can add some more of that quantifiable data into your examples and really impress employers. So you can see here that the student has done a questionnaire involving 1,000 questionnaires. They've arranged interviews with 80 students and they've presented their results to 15 in the audience. So this is just showing you how you could add in that numerical data quite simply into your CV. Now, another question that we get asked quite a lot is how will you know which skills are the most important? Now, as I mentioned at the start, it's really important that you use the job description for what you're applying for. And that's where you can really work out which skills you need to evidence on your CV. Now, if the information on the job description is very limited, they've not been very clear about what they're looking for, then you can use this list as a blueprint in the absence of any specific job description. So let's think about all the different things that you could use to demonstrate all the different skills that you've gained. Think very broadly about internships, volunteering, any part-time jobs, holiday jobs, positions of responsibility like working in societies, or perhaps you've got clubs or hobbies where you can really show the skills, commitments, and achievements that employers are looking for. In which of your experiences can you show that your actions have really made a difference? All experiences are valuable, and you need to learn how to express them confidently to show this to the employer. If your CV doesn't have a lot of these things on it at the moment, then don't panic. There's still plenty of opportunity to do this alongside current work or study. So have a think about where else you could start developing more transferable skills throughout your degree or as a recent graduate. Employers are interested in activities that demonstrate the skills relevant to the role and the sector. This can include significant achievements, both academic and personal. And remember that awards always need an explanation and a date of when you have won that award. So as you can see here, what is the Sir William Bartlett Award? Is that an academic award? Is that for a sporting achievement? So you don't just list them. You need to explain a little bit to the employer what that really means. In the UK, including a reference can vary both on the policy of the organisation asking for the reference and what the organisation is asking for. An employer may choose to contact referees at any stage in the process, although it's much more likely that this will be at the final stages due to the time it takes administratively to ask for referees. If you're currently in employment, you may ask your current employer not to be contacted until you've been made an offer. Always follow any instructions provided by the employer or course provider. And if they do not tell you whether to include reference details in that application, it's usually fine to just write references available on request at the bottom of the CV and offer details later when the recruiter asks for them. One exception is law CVs. They prefer full contact details on the CV. You would usually be asked for 2 referees. The majority of students would usually ask one academic, perhaps an academic advisor, or a previous employer, either your most recent employer or perhaps the most relevant to the role you're applying for. It's important to ask permission before you include someone as a referee and let them know what you're applying for, as this will help them write a reference for you when the employer contacts them. Now, a referee may simply be asked to confirm the facts of when you worked for their company. They might be asked for a more in-depth reference which assesses you against criteria the company sets, such as your levels of communication, punctuality, attendance, or it might be more of a testimonial about you recommending you for a particular role or course, and perhaps a little bit about your character. So hopefully you're now feeling a little bit more confident about what to include in the CV and how to express your evidence and provide evidence for your skills. You can use the QR code scanner here to access our website with full guidance and top tips, including some templates and example CVs to help you get started. If you haven't already, I definitely recommend following us on social media to keep up to date with all the latest news, events and opportunities. We're also on Facebook and Twitter and have our own careers YouTube channel where you'll find links to all our past recordings and more topical pieces featured on the Manchester University Careers blog. Remember that we're always here to help in the Careers Service. We really hope that you enjoy your studies and time at Manchester, being curious, connected and courageous. So thank you very much for coming today. I hope you found it useful and we'll see you soon.